Today on The Practice, we have Jim Dethmer. Jim is a master teacher and guide for leaders ready to step in their full aliveness. As the founding partner of the Conscious Leadership Group, Jim has spent the last 3 decades mentoring CEOs, founders, and their teams to wake up, step up, and show up in every area of their lives. Jim has personally coached hundreds of top executives and their teams, helping them build conscious cultures rooted in radical responsibility, candor, and deep presence. His work has shaped the evolution of conscious leadership for Fortune 100 boardrooms, high-growth startups, and mission-driven organizations around the world. Jim is the co-author of The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, an Amazon bestseller that has become a foundational text for leaders seeking to transform how they lead and live. Beyond his writing, Jim continues to coach select top leaders who are committed to conscious leadership in their lives and organizations. He oversees forums in Chicago, New York, where leaders gather in intimate settings to deepen their presence, expand their perspective, and practice the art of conscious leadership in real time. Jim is also more than these descriptors. He's an amazing human that when he walks into the room lights up. He brings energy and love in every setting he's in. Jim, thank you for being here. I want to, first say thank you. Second, do a quick introduction. You are an amazing human, and that's where I'm going to start, and that's probably where I'm going to end. I think I've known you, over 10 years now?
I think so.
We spent the last few years spending more and more time together. And yes, like an onion, every layer is a bit deeper, a bit more profound, and consistent. You have done, your bios, your books, your coaching, very, very clear. But I've had the privilege of really getting to know you, and you've been wonderful in my life. So thank you.
You're so welcome.
Yeah. So I'm pumped, right? I'm caffeinated. I'm pumped. I'm ready to chat. So I want this to go in any which way you want. I have questions. I'm going to ask a lot of them. And so, I wanted to kind of, I guess, maybe tell me a little bit about your journey, right? You've done it in plenty of podcasts. You shared a little bit with me, but you've always been a seeker, right? When did that begin for you? What did that feel like, and what does it feel like today?
Yeah. Well, if we go in the Wayback Machine, I think I was a sad kid, probably subclinically depressed, kind of an ache in the center of my chest, and lonely. Although on the outside, quite socialized. I was a good athlete and a good student, and relatively successful in my peer group, but hurting on the inside.
Before dad or after dad?
Before my dad died.
Okay.
I can track this back to when I'm 6 or 7 years old. Whether it was just existential angst or something more than that, I don't know. But that ache created a yearning that didn't go away until 15 or 20 years ago. And that yearning, I think, is what created me being a seeker. So at the deepest level, what I was looking for, without being able to put words to it, I was looking for peace. I was looking for some sort of equanimity. I was looking, happiness, a sense of well-being. Second, I've always been interested in relationships, partially because I think I was a lonely kid. I wanted to know, can I have relationships? What makes relationships work? So I've been seeking what creates great relationships, sustainably great relationships that are below just the superficial pseudo level. So I've been seeking that. So seeking peace, seeking relationships, and then you and I both share a passion for leadership. That comes probably because everything I've been involved with, I was in some form of leadership around it. So I've been curious around, what does real leadership look like? So those 3 drives created in me a seeker. The first one being the real engine that drove it. Mm-hmm. That sense of unhappiness.
So you said it went away about 15-ish years ago. That sounds like a distinct period moment. Can you unpack that for me? What happened? How did that suddenly go away? And what are some of the takeaways there?
Yeah, great. So I wouldn't say it suddenly went away. It progressively went away. And I think it went away as a result of the practices that I'd accumulated over the years to be able to be with myself and be okay on the inside. So this is a big category. We could talk about this for hours. In my experience, most people are just not okay on the inside. And so they're moving through life looking for something to make them okay, feel all right. And I started pursuing practices many, many years ago that are designed to help you discover that you're actually already okay. Now, that's a big phrase. Millennia of wisdom traditions have written about that. Most of the spiritual traditions have talked about it. Many of the current best psychotherapies talk about it. Can you really experience a fundamental okayness that you don't have to create, that is already here, and you can simply relax back into it?
So the psychotherapy, right, psychoanalyst side, that has me asking, is that letting go of your unconscious prediction or making peace with what, that early childhood trauma, whatever it may be, right? It doesn't have to be a real trauma. It could be a perceptual one, right, as we take in.
Right. So you're bringing up two categories, the unconscious and trauma. And I think they're different and can be dealt with and handled differently. So now, in recent years, through people like Peter Levine and somatic experiencing and the body keeps score and all these things, now we know that trauma is not a unique thing that happened to a few of us who had trauma with a capital T.
That's right.
Right? We're abused or were raised in meaningfully toxic homes where our parents were addicted to anger or addicted to alcohol, or we had serious abandonment issues, or, saw the death of a sibling, capital T trauma. But the body accumulates small t trauma. And small t trauma is just anything that was too much, too fast, too soon. Now, if you look at the biography of most of us, we had many, many episodes in our life where something happened that for this nervous system was just too much. It happened too fast and it was too soon developmentally. So then the body accumulates. So in order to access this fundamental sense of okayness, at some point we have to start letting the body heal up from the wounds that had occurred. Well, this is your world. We could move it over to the physical world. If you're going to really get me into full mobility and you're going to get me into full vitality, and I've got a broken leg, you're going to deal with my broken leg, and then you're going to get the bone right. Then you're going to get me into physical therapy. And then eventually you're going to get me into movement, and then I'll be able to play pickleball. Well, it's the same thing psychically or spiritually. If I have all these accumulated ouches, hurts, wounds that I'm not aware of, and I don't know how to take care of them, and now we know how to take care of them. It's not a mystery anymore. Can you just learn to be with your body?
So can you unsolve that mystery? Because I would say that I think it's a mystery for a lot of people about how to take care of them. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, here's what's wild. It's so simple. Not easy, but simple. And for most of us, can't be done on our own at first. We need to be in a supportive relationship where somebody is holding a space of safety that allows me. So here's the way it starts. You just think of something going on in your body. It could be a contraction, a buzzing, a pulsing, something that feels just off or not right. Then you learn to bring your attention to the body. And to notice, I feel contraction in my chest. I feel pressure. I feel like a closing of my throat. Now, all I'm doing is resting a non-judgmental attention on it. And then the coach or therapist will say, as you let the body have its experience, do any memories, images, sounds come up? And then the body will show it to you. And then can I be with that memory in a way that titrates, lets it happen in little chunks so that the body can release the stored injury and I can come back to presence. So I've greatly oversimplified trauma therapy, but that's basically what it is. Now, of course, when I first start this journey, I'm not okay with my body. I don't know how to be with my body. So you, as my coach therapist, you create a safe place where I trust you enough to start the journey. But if you fast forward, all meditation is, ultimately deep meditation, is the ability to be with what's happening in here and be okay. Well, that heals trauma progressively, over time, gently. So I did all that work to take care of all of my childhood traumas. I had some big T traumas and some little T traumas. And by and large, they've all been meaningfully healed, dealt with. And if there are more in there, they're like plates in a cafeteria, that plate stacker where you take the first plate off and then the next plate pops up. If you just take the first plate and deal with that with a little bit of loving kindness, a little bit of compassion, when it's time, the next plate will pop up. So that's the trauma piece, and we could go deeper into that. But then you also introduced unconscious. Now you're into psychotherapy or psychoanalysis. And the whole idea, in a gross oversimplification and unfair characterization, is you can get into the unconscious by free associating. Okay, that's great. I happen to come from a school founded by Gay Hendricks, one of my mentors, who had a much simpler approach to the unconscious, which is you can tell what you're unconsciously up to by the results you're creating. Now, this is a wild idea.
Awesome.
It's a wild idea. So, like if I'm working with a couple and what they're coming in for is that they're reporting they have, meaningful conflict. They yell at each other. They don't have much intimacy. There's a lot of drama and tension. The game changes when they can start to own, it takes a little bit of time, I'm unconsciously committed to having drama with you. Well, now and the unconscious just says, here's what we know that the unconscious is powerful. And it's like, 7/8 of the iceberg is the unconscious. It's driving conflict. Well, when a couple can say, I'm unconsciously committed to fighting with you, and then they go, how am I doing that? How am I creating this recurring drama? Well, then you can get insight into the unconscious very rapidly. And then they go, well, the reason I'm unconsciously committed to fighting with you is because I don't know how to be close. I was raised in a family where I never saw anybody who was close.
And suddenly it becomes an aha.
Now it's an aha. And you don't have to spend years in therapy. There's wonderful reasons to do therapy. I've done it,
Me too.
But this is a different thing. This is a more efficient way to find out what's blocking you. And I'll come back to my big theme. What's blocking you from being okay in the now moment with what's here? So I did these practices that accumulated, in my early 50s, maybe. So now maybe 20 years ago. And they started to pay the dividends, which they do, which is I could spend more and more time just being okay. I didn't need to be looking at a screen. I didn't need to be reading a book. I didn't need to be listening to music. I didn't need alcohol or drugs. I didn't need any of that. I could just sit still and be okay. Well, when you can, what's the great quote? Most of the sufferings of mankind come from our inability to just be alone with ourselves. It's true. If we can't be with ourselves, then we're going to get activated to try to make ourselves okay. But I think there are paths now, known paths in how to experience this okayness in a reliable, stable way. It doesn't mean that I don't lose it. I lose my shit all the time. But
that's normal.
It's
right?
normal.
We're supposed to lose our shit, right? And come back to normal.
Come back. So it's, it's like in AA, they talk about falling off the wagon.
Right.
And I like to say, well, at least you have a wagon to fall off of. It's like once you know what presence is and how to cultivate presence, then you lose your shit. No big deal. You don't make that a big deal. You just say, do I know how to get back into presence? So it's like presence, drift, shift back. That becomes the game. Doing that dozens of times a day. So now you lose presence less often. When you lose presence, it's not as cataclysmic. And when you lose presence, you don't stay lost for very long.
And you don't have a lot of drama around it.
Bingo. Now, I think that's the possibility for everyone. I mean, that's what I do in my coaching. I come alongside people and do that.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. I think there's a couple of themes or paradigms that are very interesting to me. One is, capital versus lowercase. So yes, with trauma, that's a big one, I think. I would also, venture to say it's also probably with anxiety, right?
For sure.
There's a huge spectrum, right, of that. And in how we perceive and interpret it, there are what we'll call standards, right, of what is, considered higher level traumas, but our perception, our internalization of that is significant. The other thing that comes up for me as you're talking about this, particularly around making the unconscious conscious, right? So where my brain goes is, so how do we do that, right? Like, what are the tactics and techniques to make things, take them from the unconscious to conscious and create and hold that space? Because, right, our brains, right, in that instant are processing 11 million bits of information, and we can only consciously process about 150 in that instant.
Right.
So we have a default mode, right? How have you gotten so good, right, at holding that fucking space?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's where the magic happens, right?
Yeah.
Or at least what it sounds like.
Sure. So I suggest there's only a handful of ways to discover what has currently not been discoverable, and they're practical. And these are tools. So one is some sort of reflection practice. We could call it meditation. We could call it mindfulness.
Does walking outside count?
We'll get there.
Okay.
It depends on what you're doing when you're walking outside. Like we were saying, we're in Chicago. You could be walking down LaSalle Street and not be present at all. You're a million miles away. You're in yesterday or last week or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or you're off in the future, or you're walking down LaSalle Street, looking at your phone, looking at social media. So walking outside doesn't count in that way. Now, if you can walk outside, especially in nature, and actually be present to nature, it will slow down your system enough that you can open to what's down there that you haven't wanted to look at. But it's not the first. I highly recommend being in nature. I highly recommend forest bathing, the great Japanese technique. I highly recommend letting nature hold you, inform you, create awe in you. But if you want to start to develop this capacity for a little bit longer toleration, so you can start to discover what's in there, some sort of mindfulness practice, which is usually for most people some sort of sitting practice, beginning by just following the breath, so you can start to give a little bit of concentrative attention, which, as we were talking beforehand, is getting harder and harder because as people are on TikTok and things like that, their capacity to hold concentrative presence is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So meditation or mindfulness is one technique to start to develop capacity so that I can sit a little longer. And then I start to notice when I sit a little longer, wow, anxiety starts to come up. Now, before I can sit, I love your capital A, little a. Let's just say it's little a anxiety, just the normal anxiety, the existential anxiety of being a human. But I can't tolerate it, so I'm looking at screens all day long, or I'm compulsively doing things. When I sit in stillness for a few minutes, this is why people say, well, I meditated, but my life went to hell in a handbasket in the first 5 minutes because my mind just started racing. Well, the truth is your mind's doing that all the time. You just sat still long enough to feel it. Now, then you go, wow, what am I going to do with that anxiety, which feels like a little bit of nausea or gurgling? So meditation or mindfulness is one approach. Another one is something like reflective journaling. Not having a diary where you say, yesterday I talked to Ari for 2 hours and then I went to dinner with a friend, but actually something like morning pages, which comes out of the creativity tradition, where you just free associate 2 pages no matter what. I tell people, if you just do that, take a journal and write for 2 pages every day for a month. It doesn't matter even if you write blah, 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 I don't know what to say, I'm bored with myself. The unconscious will start to show itself. Okay, that's a second way. A third way to discover your unconscious is to be in relationships where people give you authentic feedback. because your unconscious is showing up in relationships, but we all believe our own bullshit so much, and we're so defended against feedback. But if we decide to get into a trusting relationship where I have this blind spot in the back of my head, well, in order to see that blind spot, I need 2 mirrors. I can't do it with 1 mirror. I need 2 mirrors. So we all have these unconscious blind spots. Well, if we get into an authentic relationship and regularly we're in some sort of context, small group, some sort of situation where I say to you, what blind spots do you see in me? What do you see that I don't see? And there are lots of questions to ask to get at that. That's a third way to start to get at the unconscious. So you can do it through meditation. You can do it through journaling. You can do it through receptive feedback. Now, you and I have talked about the gift of medicine journeys, the gift of these potential psychedelics is that they also can open the door. Again, done with proper set and setting and all the good stuff that we know, not in a recreational, casual way, although they can do it that way too. It's just hard to get them integrated. But if they're done in the right setting, they can be an opening. So there's, in addition to owning your unconscious commitments, which you started with, there's 4 ways they're like different portals in to what's sitting under there that we've walled ourselves off from because we're not okay being with it. But if we can start to develop a little bit of compassionate tolerance for being with it, what we discover is it will heal itself. So does that get at what you're talking about ways into this?
Totally. And
through the trap door?
Yeah. And we'll get into sort of the psychedelics and all of that. And, you said it's simple, but not easy. And I think, what comes up for me is the athletic mindset of the notion of, you got to go deep in the pain cave, right? Is something that you'll hear athletes say, right? Be comfortable in the discomfort and experiencing that, right? So in the stillness, in the safety, in the quiet, right? Feel that angst,
That's
right? That is okay. And you don't have to do anything, right?
Right.
Feeling to doing, right? You want to elongate that space and give yourself that window. I also hear you saying, when you talk about the relationships, right? That you need a safe relationship. The words that were coming up, and I just want to make sure that they're congruent, are safe,
yes,
and respected,
yes.
And then the third one I'd say is trusted. So it's somebody you have deep trust that they can hold you vulnerably,
yes,
right, and still share authentically and say, you know what, Ari, I think you're over-indexing here, or you're trying to do too much, or whatever it might be.
That's beautiful, right? So take our relationship. One of the ways we relate is you are my doctor.
Yeah,
and I imagine people know you. I come to you because I'm 72 years old. I could have, real health things that could occur that you see, you deal with. But I come to you because we're also, in addition to working on lifespan, we're working on the quality of my life, my vitality. Well, what do I do that for? I trust you. I respect you. You're safe to me. I respect you because you've got a million reps at this. This has been something you've been passionate about. I trust you because you see me. The first time we ever talked, you must have talked to me for an hour and a half, just listening to my story and connecting dots. You have all these levels of expertise. So safe, respected, trusted at this level.
Yep.
So therefore, I'm open to your feedback. You say to me, Jim, what you're doing there is actually, there's no scientific validation for that. If you want to do it as a N of 1 and a placebo, go ahead. So I trust you. Or you'll say you could consider this. Okay. Now that's one way you and I relate to each other. But in every other way, whether it's an intimate relationship or a coaching relationship or a business partnership, safe, trusted, respected. They're incredibly important. Now, I want to say one thing, which is a radical idea, but I want to offer it just for your consideration, everybody's consideration. We should have had parents, caregivers, whether it was a grandparent or something, who created an environment of attachment, so now we could get into attachment theory, that allowed me to have a fundamental sense that I was safe on the inside, that I could trust myself, and that I could respect my own knowing. That would have been ideal if we were in a holding environment that allowed us to be safe, trusted, and respected on the inside. Now, hardly anybody had that. So we all come out wounded. Like, I really want to be a loving parent to my kids and my 8 grandkids, and you're a loving parent. But the truth of the matter is we're going to raise wounded kids who at some level aren't safe, trusting, and respected internally. Well, here's what you need. Until you can cultivate that on the inside, you need another. You don't need hundreds. You just need a couple of people that you feel safe with, you trust and you respect enough to risk being vulnerable so that you can start to heal from the inside. But here's what I say, even as a great coach, let's say, what you are, eventually you're going to help me see that safety's in here, not out there.
Yeah. So where you point the finger, you point the power.
Bingo. Trust is in here. Can I trust myself to be okay no matter what?
Yes, and totally agree! Exclamation point.
Yes.
At 43, right? Can we go to this window of time?
Sure.
You're doing pretty well, right? By all external measures, right? You're at the pinnacle, if you will, one of the largest churches in the U.S.
Right.
And then something happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go.
So something happened in colloquial terms, could be a midlife crisis. In the hero's journey, which I love the hero's journey and the whole mythology behind it, it's called a descent to the ashes. I love that phrase. And over the years now, I've worked with many women and men who start to hit that midlife period. It still occurs sometime between 35 and 50. And for most people in that period, they realize they're misaligned. Who they are on the inside isn't what they've created on the outside. What they're doing with their life doesn't match up with who they really are. Now, for some people, the misalignment is 2 degrees. And so moving back into alignment is just a couple of small tweaks. For some people, the misalignment is great. I say how much you're going to need to melt down your life or how big your midlife crisis is going to be is a function of how far you're out of integrity with who you really are and how fast you've accelerated in the success curve. So what I mean by that is, so the first era of my life from about 15 to 40, spiritual community was really important to me. Specifically Christian community. And so I was interested in being an authentic Christian, and it became my vocation. So I went to graduate school, got a degree, became a minister, grew through the ministerial ranks to where I was one of the ministers at the largest church in the United States. So now at 40 years old, I was speaking to 10 to 20,000 people a week about the Christian faith. I was flying all over the world. I had some amount of success in my career. But down deep, I was still feeling out of alignment. So I was talking to people, the Bible's got some great phrases in it, like there's a peace that passes all comprehension. What in the world does that mean? All I knew was I would talk about it to thousands of people, then I wouldn't feel it on the inside. And I was honest about it with people. So I could no longer talk about something and live something that wasn't congruent. Mm-hmm. So I was far off. I'd created a whole life based on a set of personas that needed to get approval from the outside. So I was disconnected, and my speed of success was rapid. So now at 40, I say, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I can't do this anymore, and I resign. Well, that was a crisis. What am I going to do with my life?
And you just resigned. You didn't have a plan B. You didn't think about it strategically. You were just like, no mas.
I couldn't do that anymore. People say,
was there a moment that you just knew that this was done?
Yeah, there actually was a culminating moment. There's another thread I want to bring in because it's really relevant here in just a minute. There was a culminating moment. I was in San Diego. The church was in Chicago. I was living in Chicago. I was in San Diego with a friend. I was at a speaking thing. And he and I had a conversation one night where he helped me see that so much of my drive to be a Christian leader was driven by deep insecurity. And it was one of those trusted, respected, safe relationships where I felt like I'd gotten hit in the head with a 2x4. And it's like all the things that I thought were being driven by such healthy motives to spread love in the world, to help people experience an authentic relationship with God. There was some of that, but a huge portion of it was driven by my insecure needs for whatever it was I was getting from that. And it was like a wave of shame coursed through my body. And I thought, what am I doing?
So like if I help others, I'll be okay. It'll soothe the insecurity. That was the initial.
That's a huge part of it. I think everybody's looking for approval, control, and security, 3 core wants. Well, I was using my career, which would be fine. If I was a doctor, I could use my career to get approval. Hopefully, patients like, love, value, esteem you. I could get control. I could master the methodologies of medicine, all the algorithms. I could get some sense of control in my life, and I could get security. I could have a good payoff for what I'm doing in life. I could have a meaningful income and some security. No problem. But I was dealing in the spiritual realm, and to use the spiritual realm to get a sense of approval that I didn't have on the inside, to get control through a very rigid orthodoxy, rules of the faith, control, and security, a sense of safety because thousands of people wanted to listen to what I had to say, that felt like a hypocritical disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm not saying that's true for anybody else. There are probably many, many good ministers in the world, priests, rabbis, who don't experience that at all. But that wasn't true for me. I was out of integrity, and I couldn't go a step further. So that was the first beginning of the descent to the ashes. I quit not knowing where I was going. Now, that wasn't where the real descent occurred. When I left being a minister, I started working with men in small groups, doing midlife stuff. It was very healing and very good. But I was in a marriage that I'd been in for now about 20 years. I'd never been happy in the marriage. But the world that I lived in of Christianity was not something where you could ever consider divorce. To be divorced was equal to murdering somebody. And I didn't know. I'd been in therapy. We'd been in couples therapy for years. I didn't know what to do. So I made a choice. It was a conscious choice to have an affair. I reconnected with a girl that I went to high school with. We were really good friends in high school. We decided to have a relationship that was secret. Now, that was really fun for a while. And it was horribly uncomfortable for me to live a lie. So after leaving my job and then having a relationship with Debbie, with not telling Carol, my wife, I couldn't tolerate that anymore. So in one fell swoop, I told the world, and this was hundreds of people, and they were still selling many of my talks around the world, that I'd been having an affair. Now that starts the descent to the ashes. Because in the world that I lived, it wasn't okay to do that, and it especially wasn't okay to lie about it. So now, remember, I wanted approval, control, and security from the outside, but I blew up my life. It ended up with a front page article in a Chicago paper that this church, defrocks their former minister, not about the affair, but about the work we'd been doing with men. We were doing deep men's work. So all of a sudden, my reputation went in the toilet. Now I'm 43 years old, and everything that I'd built was gone. Well, that's what I'd call a midlife crisis. That's what I would call a descent to the ashes.
What were you feeling? Were you feeling all of the shame, anxiety, felt like your trauma, didn't have anybody to lean on, or was Debbie there for you then? I mean, so, going into the depths sounds scary. I wouldn't use the word fun, but it's a story, right, that has a positive ending here, right? But for folks who are in the depths, it's like, sorry, what the fuck?
It was what the fuck. I was I didn't have Debbie. We had decided, and it was a good decision. I said, Deb, I got to end this, and I've got to go public in my world. And I'll never see you or talk to you again until I finish my relationship with Carol, and I'm going to go back into therapy with Carol. So I didn't have Debbie. I didn't have most of the support structure of the world. Now, I did have a few, and you don't need many, a few close friends.
A few who stuck by you.
Who stuck by me. And stuck by me doesn't mean that they were like, oh, you're perfect, you're good. They're like, good. you're finally doing your work to get into integrity as a human. So what was it like? I lost 20 pounds. After a while, I decided that I didn't want the marriage anymore. I didn't have much money. I'd been a minister. I moved out of my home. I lived in my office for about 6 months, an office not unlike this. I was coaching. I'd started a little coaching practice. I'd coach my clients during the day and sleep on my couch at night. So here I was, from a person who had some renown in the world to living in my office, sleeping on a couch, scared, terrified, probably depressed. So all that was there, and free. So all of a sudden, my life was coming back into integrity. I decided I'm never going to pretend to be anything other than what I am anymore.
So talk about that free for a second. What does that mean or feel like?
Well, what it felt like was I'm not living a lie. And not just the lie of having had an affair, but the lie of being incongruent with what I said and who I was all the time. I wanted to be congruent. What's on the inside matches what's on the outside. Yep. So at that point, I decided, as best I could, and I slip off this one too, I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be congruent. Well, there's a freedom in that is unexplainable.
Mm-hmm.
To not have to pretend. Now I say to the world, anything I say, you can ask me any question. I'll answer the question. It can be on the front page of the New York Times tomorrow. I don't care. I'm not going to hide anymore. And that leads to a sense of freedom and potency gently over time after I got through the tunnel of chaos. Because when you melt your life down, it is terrifying.
Did you find that pattern coming back, though, wanting to hide, wanting to have a little lie here or there? Like it's as if, was it all black and white? It was suddenly.
And it still comes back.
So this, I think, is really important, because most people, I think, associate, I had this moment and it changed forever, but it might have, right? But you have to scaffold that, right?
Right.
Because their old habits die hard.
I've met a few people who had a one-time experience and it changed forever. And, the literature's full of people who actually experienced instantaneous enlightenment,
mm-hmm.
and all the patterns were done. That's not me, and that's not most people. For me, it's progressive. And the patterns, the insecurities, the codependencies, those don't go away.
Mm-mm.
They still are in me. And so every day I can come up to a choice point. Am I going to be authentic and reveal? Or am I going to hide and pretend? Every day, multiple times a day. It never goes away. I think what's true is more and more I make the choice of being authentic and revealing and not hiding. And if I did hide, I'm real good at doing do-overs where I'll go back and I say, I didn't say everything I had to say about that. I want a do-over. Debbie and I do this all the time. We are committed to, and by the way, Debbie, with whom I had an affair, we ended up being together. We've been together 25, 30 years now. And we practice this because all this stuff, we're just talking at the individual level. How do you become okay on the inside? But its implications for relationships. How do we do this together? Mm-hmm. How do we have an authentic relationship? How do we create a drama-free or drama-minimized relationship? How do we learn to end all the toxic patterns that we've created? That's the other big thing. Remember, I told you, I wanted to have peace, I wanted to have relationships, and I wanted to know about leadership. So it's not a one and done thing. It never has been. I feel like I'm constantly expanding, but there is always a more stable sense of that fundamental okayness. And if you're fundamentally okay on the inside, then I can risk saying to you, hey, I notice I didn't tell you all the truth about what I really thought about your presentation the other day. So I want to do over and I want to tell you that. Or I want to tell you that I really felt sad when you said that, or I scared myself that you were going to leave me, or just any language like that of vulnerability that brings us more authentically close.
So repetitions.
Reps.
Reps build reputation, huh?
Right.
Yeah, that's it's one of our doctors, Brian Hollett. It's a phrase of his he uses. I love it. So if you were talking to your 40-year-old self today, what would you say?
Well, now I would say, you're going to be okay. You're really going to be okay. And it's going to be scary and bumpy. And if you stay on the path and get back on the path when you fall off the path, you're really going to be like deeply okay.
Do you think people know that enough about themselves in this world?
No. In fact, that's what I do in
Ditto.
my coaching. Maybe that's what you do. You know, what I do now is I come alongside people who are having some version, usually not as dramatic as mine, but they're having some version of making choices. And basically what I do is I hold a space that says to them, you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually okay now, even though you don't know it. And I can know you're okay enough for both of us right now until you know you're okay. That's what you do in a trusted, that's what you do as a parent.
Yeah.
Right? That's what your wife is doing with all of her expertise around attachment theory and stuff like that. Basically what she's doing, you're just saying to your kids over and over again, you're okay.
Yeah.
Like they think they saw a boogeyman under the bed in the middle of the night and you say to them, I hear you. I don't need you to be different than you are right now and you're okay. And then their nervous system settles.
Right.
Well, that's what we do in authentic relationships of any kind. We're just saying, can we co-regulate our nervous systems so that we can actually experience a little bit of okayness? So that's what I'd say to my 40-year-old self. That's what you say to people all day long.
All day long.
That's really what you do in so many areas. And really, you know, that's what you're doing, because I experience you to be a fabulous doctor, a healer. That's what you do with me. I'll call you and I'll say, what about this? I've done this with you multiple times. I have a Clearly test, you know, which measures whatever calcium in your main arteries. And you look at it and you say, that's a little ugly. And then I say to you, basically, am I okay? And you say to me, this is worthy of attention, but it's not urgent. And we're going to get you what you need. You didn't say you're going to be okay because you don't know whether I'm going to be okay. But you say to me, I see you. I know you. I'm not surprised by this. This isn't the first time I've seen this. And I know how to take you by the hand and walk you through this.
Yeah. And walk alongside you.
That's what we're doing in life.
Amen. Totally. 1,000%. God, there's so much I want to say on that. I
Say
love
what
this.
you want to say. You have so much to say about all this. What's coming up for you about any of this?
You know, I find it fascinating. I think we need to do hard better. I really think we have to change the narrative about right and wrong and black and white and hold that gray space. That, you know, because that, to me, that's where the magic is. That is where love is found. That's where healing occurs. It's not about failing to fight. And, you know, lovers can be fighters, right? And fighters can be lovers. You can do all of that, but can you hold that gray just long enough to find the opportunities and the solutions to heal? You know, and it's so interesting and fascinating to me because the brain is set for automatic. We are, I tell all my patients, right? We're not here to think about being healthy and fit. Right. It's irrelevant to our growth unless it inhibits our ability to breathe, our ability to walk. We want to set patterns, right? And so generally we're built with a functional reserve. So I find it so fascinating that, as much as we understand about the brain, I see all the social media, all the stuff we were talking about earlier as huge distractions, pattern distractions, right? So nobody can sit, or it's harder and harder and harder to sit for an hour, to sit for 10 minutes, right? Everything is a shorter bit of dopamine that gets hit, right? And how you do that hard and how you build that reserve, I think is really, really important. So.
Well, let me ask you, what are some of the tools you find to be reliable around doing the hard and tolerating the gray, the paradox, the ambiguity?
Oh, God. So what are the things that I do? Movement is medicine for me. You know, I think movement started out as what I would sort of say is maybe physical armor. I'm going to be physically fit and that's going to allow me to be an athlete and blah, 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 right? I understand movement to be medicine for my mind. And also it's a way to engage with some level of suffering, if you will. And that suffering, creates courage for me, right? So as I'm able to do something that's a little bit hard, I have a little bit more courage. And as I tell all my patients, like, nobody ever feels worse after a workout, right? You always have it before, but never after. I have people around me. We are not alone, right? Sometimes we may feel alone, but I have an amazing therapist.
Yeah.
And I have people who I work with and live with who love me, right? And I can say that wholeheartedly, from, my COO just on the other side of this wall, to another physician, to my forum, to you. And I feel lucky, and lucky because it's, I have people who will call me on my shit, right? And being able to be called on your shit is important, right? I mean, it really is important, because we have blind sides. That's why they're called blind sides, and I don't expect to get it right. So
that's great. So movement and relationships.
Movement and relationships. And what I've come to really also build on for me is, in my 40s, I did not appreciate, in my 40s was where I got religion about sleep, and recovery, and there's a distinction between all-stars versus Hall of Famers. And I'm not talking strictly professionally. We've talked about this before. All-stars learn the pattern that they have to rinse and repeat over and over and over to get the job done. And they're excellent at it, right? Hall of Famers recognize this is not going to be able to provide the same output. So I have to get really good at picking my moments for when to show up. And what that means is not only about the work that they put in to get them ready to perform, but about the recovery that they do to allow their bodies or their minds or their souls and their spirits, right, to totally recover. And that part is a huge lesson learned, right? So sleep is, we could have hours of talk on sleep. You can't shortchange it. It's why the phrase "youth is wasted on the young."
Yeah.
We need it. I am 20% better every day, hands down, by getting sufficient sleep.
Wow.
Right. And then the other one is this one that you were talking about, which is sitting, right? Holding the space, being quiet with yourself, listening. I find that I take on tension, so I tend to cringe up. And so all those things are helpful, but physical touch matters. So deep tissue work is super, super, super important for me, in order to help me actually open up and not feel the tension that I might be carrying from everything else.
That's good. So you've named 5: movement, relationships, the ability to get quality sleep and lots of it, sitting, and touch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you a question. You've worked with hundreds of people. Do you think one of those is harder for most people? One of those is easier? Or is it totally individual?
It's a hard question for me to answer. I think everybody has their natural tendencies, right? You figure out that you need some things. Some people come in and say, well, I'm an 8-hour sleeper. I know that I'm a sleeper. I can't get exercise in. Or some people find themselves waking up early in the morning and exercising and doing their thing. And everybody's got, they find their recipe.
Yeah.
I find it so interesting, though, that people don't look at it like assets, right? Like, we have a very, the financial world, right, has a model of how we build wealth and how we accumulate different asset categories. We look at liabilities. It's a math equation largely. Right. I always want to say, like, what are the things you're doing to build the asset classes for how you want to build your health, right, and earn it over time?
Yeah, that's good.
So,
well, I'll just tell you, those 5 things you mentioned resonate with me. And they're all 5 things that I pay attention to.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question. What's your morning routine? Even though I know this answer, I'd love for some people to hear about how Jim wakes up and gets his day going.
Okay, great. So first of all, it's not rigid anymore. It used to be very disciplined. Discipline comes easily for me. So it used to be very disciplined. So it can have some fluidity and fluctuation, but I'll tell you this, by 10 o'clock in the morning, these have always occurred, almost always occurred.
Yep.
So I wake up naturally, easily. I never set an alarm anymore because sleep really matters to me. I've got my sleep hygiene's pretty dialed in. I get a really good night's sleep. I wake up naturally and easily between 5:30 and 6 in the morning, and I'm a morning person. So when I wake up, it's like, hot damn, another day to live life. Now, I do a couple things that probably aren't probably best if I immediately went for a walk and I, got the right liquid into my body first. But I'm not like that. The first thing I do is I get a cup of coffee and I go sit in the darkness. So some people might say get light in your eyes first. I go sit in the darkness. And for just a few minutes, I just sit in stillness while I sip my coffee. Then I'm going to do some form.
Do you have a mantra, or you?
It's coming.
Okay.
The first few minutes is just sip the coffee and be still in the darkness. Now that usually lasts 10 minutes, something like that. And then I'm going to go into a meditation. And over the years, I've done countless different meditations, and everything from a simple app like the Waking Up app or any of those. I highly recommend those. In recent years, I've been doing what's called the realization process, which is an embodied meditation where I literally inhabit my body. What does that look like and feel like? So I'll do some sort of presencing or meditation for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. By that time, Debbie has started to wake, and I'll take her a cup of coffee. I want to have a relational connection with her early in the morning. So that'll just look like handing her a cup of coffee, making some eye contact, maybe a kiss, maybe kissing her on the forehead and saying, I see you, you see me, how are you? Not a long thing, that's coming. And then we'll go our separate ways. She has a different path. She likes to do readings. I don't read much, and she'll start on her path. Okay, then I come back, and now movement is almost always going to kick in. So now I'm an hour and a half into the day, and my favorite thing for me is a walk. I spend most of my time in northern Michigan. Out my door, turn right 100 yards, and I'm in the forest, the sand dunes, and in the lakes. So I'll walk for usually 60 to 90 minutes. Sometimes I'm rucking, depending on where my workout pattern is. Mm-hmm. Now I'm moving, usually in silence. Sometimes I'll be listening to deep journey music, so deep kind of ethnogenic music. I think that's the right word. Mm-hmm. I hardly never listen to a podcast or a book on tape. I want to be connecting with nature. Okay, so then my walk. Then I'll come back, and now it's time to actually have a connection with Debbie. And our connection just simply means, if you were to really know me, you'd know blank. We're going to do some version of that. If you were to really know me, you'd know this. And it can be light, it can be heavy, it can be playful, but we're going to have some form of a connection. Now, after we've connected, then the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to do some sort of strength training workout. As you know, I like Catalyst as a simple way to build strength, some sort of flexibility, some sort of balance, some sort of stabilization thing. I've already done my zone 2 cardio in my walk, and now I might throw zone 5 in there. So, some sort of exercise that's going to happen.
Depending on the day and the routine.
Okay. And then I'm going to consume my first calories, which, you and I have talked a lot about getting enough protein. So now I'm going to usually do a protein shake, and all that's going to happen in the first 2.5 to 3 hours of the day.
So you spend your first 3 hours on you. What do you say when somebody says, wow, that sounds so selfish?
Well, first of all, the first thing I'd say, if I knew you very well, I'd say, and are you making selfish a bad thing?
Great.
I mean, it's a really good question to say, because if you decide to prioritize your own well-being, you will get called selfish. And in most of our cultures, selfish is viewed as a bad thing. But you could go back to, when the oxygen masks drop, put yours on first, then take care of somebody else. If I spend a lot of my life bringing vitality and well-being and spiritual aliveness and awakening to human beings, if I don't spend those first 2 to 3 hours, and by the way, that's just the beginning of the day. Throughout the day, I'm doing stuff to take care of my well-being.
Totally.
Including a nap every day, including, there's all kinds of things.
Right.
Which I love it if somebody says I'm selfish. I say, you're damn right. I prioritize this self so that I have a self to give to others.
So that when you're in the moment, you can go in, you can be big, you can be bold, you can go there, right? And real.
I don't need to use this relationship for selfish purposes because this self is already nurtured physically, emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically. Of course, I'm going to get something out of this, but now I can be here on purpose, which is a huge part. I think if you're really going to live life, you have to know what your purpose is. You have to be clear about it, and you have to be able to know whether you're on purpose. So then I can be here in authentic service to what the world needs, and then I can retreat back in.
100%. And so just to be clear, because I think it's implied because I know who you are, but I nonetheless want to call attention to it. Should there be something urgent and pressing at 7 a.m., you're tending to that, right?
I handle it.
Your discipline is not, you'll break your routine if your priorities or values or people you love need you. Is that right?
Right. That's what I said. I used to be quite rigid. And by the way, when I'm having my 10 minutes of coffee, I might open my phone and say, is there anything that looks urgent on the screens? And I've been a disciplined user of getting things done, David Allen's system for many, many years. So my systems are all set up with no reminders whatsoever. All my reminders are turned off, but I know how to open, and this is a whole thing we could talk about. I know how to open one screen, glance at it, and say, is there anything that requires my attention now? Hardly ever is there anything that requires my attention now. For those first 2 hours, if there is, I handle it.
Great.
But if there isn't, I know I can close my system back down. I can go take care of myself. So remember, first 2.5, 3 hours, I'm up at 5:30 in the morning. So now it's 7:30 or 8. And I've handled everything I need to handle. I've moved my body. I've connected relationally. I've done my meditation. My nutrients are in my body. Now I'm really productive. Now I could sit down at my computer. I could record a podcast. I often have 8 and 9 a.m. coaching sessions with clients because those first few hours are very productive for me after I've had my internal introverted work. So now I'm available back to the world. And I do that until I come to that sprint. Then I come to my recover time. I usually have a quiet, simple meal, and then I take a nap. Almost every day I take a nap. I get in bed, I put on eye shades, and I take a nap.
How long is that nap?
Usually 30 minutes, but I could be in bed as much as an hour. Now, again, I'm very privileged. We got to really establish that, right? I have enough money. I have enough time. I can work as much as I want. I'm not like somebody who's got 4 kids and working a job. So I've been in that era of my life. So my life is not, I don't think, in its actual things, it's not necessarily usable to a lot of people.
100%.
But even when my life was much more chaotic, I still prioritized these things. It just would have been shorter. And then I get up after my nap. I have a cup of coffee. It's like I lived 2 days. Ronald Reagan used to do this. I do some more afternoon movement. And then late afternoon, I do a couple of more coaching sessions, or I'm writing a book. So I write and do stuff like that. And then I begin to shut it down for the evening. And I begin to start my protocols for the evening, which are usually something related to Debbie, and then setting up my sleep hygienes.
So, Jim, tell me about how you figure out when somebody says they're ready to change and whether or not they actually are.
So one of the things I use is what's called the change formula.
Okay.
Not original to me, but very, very useful. And the change formula, it's basically V, like Victor, V times D plus Fs greater than R equals C.
All right, go.
C is change.
Okay.
So how do you assess whether a person is ready to change? So V times D plus Fs greater than R. R stands for resistance.
Okay.
All change meets resistance. And if you get down to it, that resistance is usually some form of fear. So most people are change resistant. Certainly change at any meaningful level. Now, they might be willing to change at the margin, but they're not willing to change core patterns that are causing some of their issues in life. So what's greater than the resistance? Because I know when somebody comes to me, even though they tell me they want to change, they've got resistance. I'll surface those in a minute. But what's got to be greater than the resistance is the V. V is vision.
Okay.
Vision for a preferable future. a dream, a possibility, a longing. Now it's a multiplier. V times D. D is dissatisfaction with the status quo or pain. So those are the two numbers I'm looking for in the initial conversation. I'm basically listening for what is your dream? How big is your dream? And I need to know that your dream is big enough that you can't realize it living life the way you are. That's a really important conversation. I either need to know that you've got a big dream or you've got a lot of pain. Otherwise, you won't overcome the resistance to change. So when I'm first listening to somebody, I'm listening for what is your dream and how big is your pain? By the way, you're doing the exact same thing. I'll bet if you're deciding who you're going to take on as a patient, I imagine you need to know that somebody's motivated to change. You've got a finite amount of time. You're at that place in your life where you've got a wildly good set of skills. Well, you don't want to invest all of that gift that you have in people who are only going to change at the margin. Well, how are you going to determine that? Well, you're going to listen to how big is your dream? Well, if they have a big dream that you really believe they're vested in, you go, there's some motivation to overcome the resistance. Because if I'm going to tell them they have to radically change how they're eating, well, most people don't radically change how they're eating unless they've got a big dream. They know they can't ultimately run the Ironman unless they change their diet, or they've got a lot of pain. They're starting to experience that they've lost their mobility. Their diabetes is coming after them. Well, you take those two, you put them together, and let's say they have a bigger dream than that, like they want to live an authentic, fulfilling, passionate, purposeful life, and their vitality and their energy is meaningfully sagging. And then you go, I can come alongside that person. Because with that person, a little bit of FS, remember the formula is V times D plus FS. FS is first steps. The V and the D is like the engine, and the FS is like the transmission. If you get somebody who's highly motivated because they got a big dream or a lot of pain, you don't need a lot in terms of first steps. You just say to them, okay, first thing we need to work on is your sleep. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to do these 5 hygiene things. I want you to buy an 8 sleep. I want you to da-da-da-da-da. And the person goes, great, I'll have it done by Friday. Because their V and their D is so great. And that VD plus some tractionable, actionable items, that's what great coaches can deliver, can give them enough support, like you said, safety, trust, and respectability to overcome their fear so that change occurs. So that's what I'm listening to in an initial session. How big is their dream? How big is their pain? Now, where I'm at in life, not just any dream works anymore. It's just me. So I could get approached by somebody who says, I'm the executive vice president of such and such. I want to become the CEO. I think that's a very great thing for somebody to want to do, but it doesn't interest me anymore. The dream has to be big enough, or I'd say more accurately, aligned enough with my idea of transforming the world that I want to support, come alongside them. Same with you. What's a dream that's big enough to get your engagement? How much pain? Because how much pain does a person need to really change? So that's the formula that I use. It's pretty darn reliable. Does it make sense?
It makes total sense. So the hole I want to poke, right? Yeah. Or the question I want to ask is, what about consistency, right? So where is consistency in all this? Because as a caregiver and as a coach, my staff hears all the time, and I think about just in general, consistency is king.
Yeah.
If you are inconsistent, right, you'll have a ton of degree of variability, but the consistency is what scaffolds and builds over time, and also what I think creates the safety net.
Right. So, and you're talking about consistency of implementation of what you tell them to do.
Or, yes, of whatever the dream is. Yeah. So,
Got it. So one of the things I also ask in an opening conversation is, tell me about practices in your life that you do on a routine, regular basis that you've done for a long period of time. What am I fishing for? Does this person have discipline? Can they delay gratification? And, they'll say, yeah, I get up every morning at 5 o'clock and I run 6 miles. Or I read to my kids every night, no matter where I am in the world. If I'm not there, I'll get up in the middle of the night in Japan in order to read to them on Zoom. I just want to know, what is your relationship with consistency? Because if I'm coming alongside you and you haven't yet learned to delay gratification, there are many other people I could refer you to first. So I might ask them, do you have any kind of regular meditation? Do you do anything? What is your patterns of consistency that evidence to me they know how to bring their life under discipline and maintain some consistency? Because that's what we're going to start talking about. I'm going to give them homework, and I need to know they can do it.
What about the hyper changer? The person who, is always, yep, great, I'm on it, I do it, I move, and then they're ready to change again. How do you handle that person?
Well, fabulous. Do you have lots of hyper changers?
No, but there's a few of these entrepreneurs we know, that they just keep changing all the time, and they feel like they've accomplished it, but they might not have fully embedded it.
Well, okay, because that's where I was going to go. When you start to describe that person, most of us don't like change except a few.
Mm-hmm.
And their issue isn't that they need more change. Their issue is that they need more stability. In some cases, they need to tolerate boredom. I've worked with many driven leaders who the great kryptonite in their life is they cannot tolerate boredom. And so they don't know what's on the other side of boredom. So if people are addicted to change, that's a different thing. That's a compulsivity. And that's not getting them to their highest and best self. That can often just be keeping them in an adrenalized state on a bunch of dopamine hits that they get from changing everything all the time. Mm-hmm. There are those people with that personality, and then their biggest blockage is that. So in a loving context, I'm going to address that. You need to change less. You need to go deeper with what you're currently doing. Right?
Totally makes sense. So is it okay if I say with the people you're caring for? Because I think of it as care.
Yes,
I don't think of it as, so for the people that you care for, what are some of the biggest themes you're seeing today that are consistent that might have been different than 10, 15 years ago? Or are they still very similar?
Well, I think at the deepest level, the themes haven't changed for millennia. I'd go back to that same thing.
Say more.
Well, can you sit still and be okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a different way that shows up now than it did 150 years ago. And now the speed at which that inability to sit still is growing rapidly. Like we talked about, social media, now AI and what it's doing and the speed of change, people are getting less and less capable of being still and being okay. So they're getting more frenetic, more compulsive, more in dopamine addiction, not less. So that's going exponentially. Well, therefore, it takes even more commitment to quiet that, because I haven't been on social media for 15 years. That's one of the ways that I maintain this sense of peace and equilibrium. I just don't do social media. I was on the early front end of thinking, this isn't good for people's psyche. There's something off here. I like that. Now I understand that there are people who need to be on social media for their job or whatever, but that is increasing people's inability to deal with what prophets and priests and spiritualists have been pointing at forever. So that hasn't changed. It's the same core issues.
So if we think about a listener that's going to listen to us, right, or hear this, what do we want them to take away, right? What do we want that, like, we're doing this, we're recording this, we're having this conversation. You and I are not connected to any of the technology right now, right? What are the messages we want to give them?
Well, I'd give a couple. Just if they were just sitting here just as they are, I'd say, what is your pain? I'd start there. And I would say, pain is not the enemy, pain is your friend.
Mm-hmm.
You said, do the hard thing. Mm-hmm. Can you turn toward the pain? Most of us can't turn toward the pain, toward the discomfort. The pain, like if I come to you and you're doing our annual checkup and you're testing my body and you get to something and you touch it and I go, ouch, you don't say to me, well, I won't touch that again. Let's go find all the places where I can touch.
Right.
The pain gets your attention because it tells you something is out of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most of us are so anesthetized against our pain, we can't turn toward it until it overwhelms us. So I tell them, what is your pain? Pain is an invitation. Pain is something inviting you back towards wholeness. That'd be the first thing. And we would just have a cup of tea and say, tell me about your pain. And then I might go through the categories of their life. Do you have pain financially? Do you have pain physically? Do you have pain relationally? How are your friendships? How is your intimate relationships? Do you have pain in your sexual life? Just the kind of things you talked to me when you spent that first hour and a half with me, right? You went through, including you said to me, do you have pain around death? Well, yeah, probably when I started seeing you as my doctor was that 4 years ago, so I was 68. Well, that's a good question to ask a 68-year-old. You even said to me, you seem so close to Debbie. Do you have other support? Because Debbie could die before you. I thought, holy shit, what a great question.
Thank you.
Because it's easy for me to turn away from the reality that Debbie could die. 90% of my support system is Debbie. Then what? So you were inviting me turn toward.
Right.
So I tell people, what is your pain? Turn toward it. And in the pain itself is the prescription for its healing.
I love this.
In the pain itself, this is what you know.
Well, what's coming up for me are two words: wisdom and surrender.
Surrender.
Right?
So
like, we need more wisdom, right?
Yeah.
We are losing our grounded institutions where
Yes.
people could come and find themselves centered, right? There's smaller and smaller communities, right? And we're bifurcating and isolating. And then surrender, right? Surrender to the here and now, surrender to the pain, right? There's just so many pieces of that. And, whether you layer that spiritually or not, I'm not thinking about it from a religious intonation. I'm just thinking about it, the harder you can't grab water. It's that simple, right? That image, like you can't go and grab water, right? So if you surrender, right, it makes things a lot easier and more clear.
Oh, so we could do a whole hour on just surrender.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most misunderstood and misused concepts in the world. So surrender is, can I just let go and let be what is? But doing that, Krishnamurti, one of the great philosophers, teachers, was asked once, he was supposedly an enlightened being and quite peaceful. And somebody said, how did you get there? He said, the only difference between you and me, whoever asked him the question, is I don't mind what is. Now, that's a simple explanation of what surrender. If, like right now, there's light coming through this shade on your face. Well, you could say, I don't like the light. I don't want this. No, it'd be perfectly okay to get up and move or do something like that. But you could also, could I just be with the hard and let it be okay? One of the reasons I do cold plunges, there are many, as we've talked about. One of them is I want to do something. It doesn't matter how often I do cold plunges, as long as the temperature's, below 43 or so, to get in that damn thing for 4 minutes. And I know it's going to be great after the first 15 or 20 seconds. It doesn't matter. When I'm standing next to that tub, I'm going, this is going to be hard. This is going to be difficult. I do it because I want to make the difficult friendly.
Totally. It's such a
surrender.
It's so consistent. That cold plunge, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it, right? When you are sub 43 degrees, there's no sensitization there, right? Every time, which is a gift, is a real gift of that.
It never goes away.
It never goes away.
So I do it because here's a reliable way for me to have something difficult that I can surrender to. And it's a great illustration, right? Because after you learn that you can be okay, you can get your breath regulated in 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 breaths. Then you go, I'm actually going to be okay.
Right.
But I still have to surrender. Everything in my body goes, I want to get the fuck out of here.
Totally.
That's
Totally.
why I think putting ourselves in little difficult, do the hard, you said, little difficult things and surrendering is such a gift. I make it practical. Somebody's a young parent and they've got an 18-month-old who's screaming in the middle of the night. Here's your cold plunge. Here's your cold plunge. Can you just sit for 10 seconds and listen to the child scream? Not a bit. You're going to go care for them and surrender to the scream.
Yeah.
Not resist it, not contract. Go, my child is screaming. I can be with their scream and now I can go nurture them. You don't have to have a cold plunge in your basement. Life offers a shit ton of difficult things for you to surrender to.
They're everywhere you look and
everywhere
all the time.
you look. If you don't run from it, life never stops offering opportunities for wisdom and surrender.
So, we haven't gotten to your 4 pillars of integrity. I mean, you've written about this a long time ago. I know it's a part of your work, right? It's not defining. One, can you highlight the 4 pillars? Then I have 2 or 3 questions right after that.
Yeah, sure. So first, integrity comes from the root word integer, wholeness. So what does it mean to be whole? Not splintered or split off. What does it mean to be energetically whole? Alive. So I would say full aliveness and integrity are synonyms. Okay, so if I'm interested in integrity or full aliveness, what interrupts full aliveness? Well, I learned from Katie Hendricks, who wrote the original white paper on this, 4 things reliably interrupt full aliveness or wholeness. Number 1, living a life of blame and criticism. So the antidote to that is take radical responsibility for your life. Stop blaming and criticizing, and now you'll be more whole, more alive. Blaming dissipates energy. That's the first pillar. Second pillar, feel your feelings. It takes a massive amount of energy to repress feelings. It's like I say, it's like blowing up a beach ball, jump in a swimming pool and hold the beach ball underwater, and you'll get tired. Well, now hold 2 beach balls. 3. Now you're going to be exhausted. We're just mammals. We're just meant to feel and release feelings. So second pillar, feel your feelings. Third one, you want to dampen your aliveness. Just don't tell the truth. So the third pillar is don't have any withholds, reveal and be authentic. And the fourth pillar is be impeccable with your agreements. Do what you say you're going to do. Be clear who's going to do what by when. And just do what you say you're going to do. If you're not going to do it, just renegotiate. If you break an agreement, just get in integrity and I said I'd be here by 1:00. I got here at 1:15. I'm out of integrity. What do I need to do to get back in? So take responsibility, feel your feelings, reveal your truth, and be impeccable with your agreements and your word. Those 4 create a massive surge of aliveness.
Got it. So many leaders fear that if they practice this radical honesty and integrity, right, they're going to lose their edge of effectiveness. What do you say to that?
Often what I say to people, first of all, I would say, would you rather have an edge of effectiveness or full aliveness? Now that's like I ask them, I say, go think about that for a week. Well, I'd rather be effective than alive. You and I both know a lot of people who are incredibly effective and dying slowly.
100%.
Right? Dying physically slowly, dying relationally slowly, but they're effective. They're getting great quarterly returns. They're getting more stock options. They're getting bonus. Their startup is doing fine, but they're dying.
So let's coach me for a second.
Okay.
Something I struggle with is how do you handle a bad day? Now, what I mean by a bad day is my energy's off, I'm in a funk or I'm in a mood, and I know, right, that everybody leans off of what my energy is, right? And so it's a paradox, right? Because full aliveness, full integration, complete integrity, I'm clear about what that is. And I have a lot of energy, right? And I have a lot of emotion and big feels. And I know I'm going to surf that wave and there's going to be an undertow and I might tumble, but this too shall pass.
Got it.
Right? How do you handle that with your team?
Okay, great. First thing I'd tell you is stop calling it a bad day.
Great.
Once you label it a bad day, it will become that. So you said, my energy's low, I'm just a little off. What if that's not a bad thing? What if that's actually an invitation for you to pay attention to something?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we could go a long way there, but one of the things you say to your team, if you're going to practice authenticity, is you say, hey, gang, I just want to notice right up front, my energy's a little flat today. I don't have my usual mojo. I'm a professional. I'm going to do my job, and I plan to be here and do my job. But I just want you to know, because we're mammals. We're checking in with each other all the time. If you feel my energy off, you're not crazy. It's just what's true.
Right.
The story I make
and
up
it's not about you.
It's not about you.
It's about me.
Unless it is about you, and then what you can count on me for is I will tell you. So remember, we talked about this all being ultimately a relational game.
Mm-hmm.
So this means that if I feel disconnected from you and am flattening my energy, then I will come to you and we will have, based on trust, safety, and respect,
Mm-hmm.
we will have an authentic clearing conversation so that we can get back into integrity in our relationship. That happens all the time on teams. Those are just the hygienes of being a world-class team. If you're in any kind of a partnership, the shit is going to hit the fan, and you're going to get disconnected.
And, oh, by the way, life happens.
Life happens.
So you gotta,
So don't make any of that a bad thing. You just say, wow, this is the reality of where I'm at. I'm going to use where I'm at to learn, to grow, to wake up, to come into connection. And if I need to, I'll make changes in me, in you, in us.
Awesome. Talk to me about your forum experiences.
Okay. So forum is a group of 6 to 10 people that gather on a regular basis to practice this. So again, I say to people all the time, this whole thing we've talked about could just be an individual game, right? I tend to my sleep. I tend to my movement. I tend to, my habits of health and well-being. I'm practicing consciousness. But it was Ram Dass who said, if you think you're enlightened after he spent a few years in India, waking up with his guru or whatever, he's the one who said, if you think you're enlightened, just go spend Thanksgiving with your family. Because it's relational. So I call a forum a laboratory to practice. Now, what am I practicing? Well, guess what? I'm practicing moving from blaming you and criticizing you to taking responsibility. I'm practicing feeling my feelings and being a space where you can feel yours. I'm practicing radical candor. So our forums, it's not for the,
faint of heart.
Faint of heart. It's a place where we really practice. We call it love seat or hot seat. So it wouldn't be uncommon that in a given month, you're going to be on the hot seat and the group is going to go around and they're going to complete sentence stems like, I would trust you more if. I hear you regularly complaining about the thing in your life you're not fully facing. We have like 20 sentence stems in the world of feedback, including, I appreciate you for an area of brilliance or genius that I don't think you see about yourself. Something that I reliably find that comes into the room when you come into the room that changes the room for the good is this. We've got all these things where you're just practicing, going all the way.
Oh, I love that.
You do, don't you? Because your life is about this.
Oh my God. That just got me, a little bit of a flutter. I want to see all those sentence stems. Talk to me about the 4 stages of consciousness.
Okay. These are big categories.
They're big.
Okay. So again, I got this from somebody else, but they're really useful. And they're not stages, they're states. So stages is developmental.
Mm-hmm.
Stages are you go from infant to adolescent to adulthood to geriatric. Basically everybody goes through those stages. One follows the other. States you go in and out of. There's the dream state, the awake state, and the sleep state. So think more like states.
Totally.
So the 4 states are to me. Here, the world is happening to me. This is the important thing. I'm experiencing myself as at the effect of people, circumstances, and conditions. It's victimhood consciousness. Now, there are true victims in the world. That's not what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
This is being at the effect of the world. In my experience, if we walked out in the city of Chicago right now, 90% of the people out there are spending 90% of their time in that state of consciousness. The second state of consciousness, not developmental, but just state, is by me. So now I've moved agency from I'm at the effect of the world to I have agency and I am creating my experience. Now, the weather's going to be the weather. I can be at the effect of the weather and I can say, this is a shitty day. I like sunny days, not rainy days. That's to me. Or I can say, it's raining and I'm going to create myself okay with the rain. In other words, it doesn't change the circumstances of life at that stage. It's just, I get that I'm responsible for how I'm being with it. My intimate partner is in a bad mood. Well, I can be at the effect of their bad mood, or I can take responsibility for my mood in relationship to their mood. This is empowerment. This is destabilized ego identity. To me, by me, through me. After you learn that you can kind of create a life that you want, some people open up to the possibility that there might be something bigger than just you going on, whatever you want to call that, the quantum field, love, life, spirit, I don't care. And then you start asking the question, what does life want to do through me? Which requires surrender, and it is a really fun game. So it's not religious, it's not anything like that. I get up in the morning, I say to life, what do you want to do through me? I'm available. Now when I move through life, I'm looking at life as an opportunity for what is mine to have come through me into the world. So that's through me. And then as me is a state of oneness, which again, all the great traditions have talked about. So to me, by me, through me, as me. And we move in and out of those states of consciousness. They all have payoffs. One isn't better than the other. They're just different ways of being in the now moment.
And all that preparatory work allows you to get to through me and as me?
Well, in most people, they can't experience through me and as me because those are predicated on trust until they find themselves reliably able to trust themselves to be okay. That's the movement from to me to by me. Once I go, wow, I can be okay if my partner's in a bad mood. I can be okay if my bank balance isn't what I need it to be. Doesn't mean I'm not going to change it, but I can be okay. I can be okay if I'm physically off. Now I can start to trust myself. Now I can consider trusting something else. And that's what starts to open up the possibility of through me and as me.
Connection.
Yeah, you get that.
What's the biggest mistake you see in high achieving leaders?
Great. Here's the deepest mistake, is that high-achieving leaders believe that if they achieve what they think they want, they're going to be okay.
Got it.
And sitting on this side of that journey, and you don't have to do this very often before you realize it's a version of the hedonic treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
That's the deepest mistake people make. If I get there, then I'll have this. If I get there, then I'll have this. But you and I have both been around countless people. Like I'd say to you, if when you were 18 years old, you had as much money as you do now, how would you feel at 18?
Still the same way, probably.
Well, yeah, but you would have thought, oh my gosh, I'm 18 years old and I've got this much money.
Right.
Your mind would have been blown.
Totally blown.
Right? But now you're at this stage of life, and I don't know this about you, you got this much money. Is this enough yet?
Right.
So we think that achievement will fill a hole that it won't fill. So that's the deepest mistake.
That's a true story.
Right.
Got it. So what trait do you see amongst the best leaders you've worked with?
Good.
That's part one.
Good.
And then part two is when you meet somebody and you're thinking of taking them on to coach or help them either individually or in group setting, what gives you a flutter and gets you excited about that person?
Okay, great. The most essential quality is self-awareness. How much self-awareness do you have? How accurately can you see yourself? How accurately can you see your strengths, or what Gay Hendricks taught me, your zones of genius, so you know your leverage point? If I do these things, this creates the greatest return on energy invested. So how self-aware are you of your strengths, your genius points? How self-aware are you of your weaknesses and your blind spots? And how self-aware are you in any given now moment? If you tune into the channels of information flowing, thoughts, feelings, sensations, how self-aware are you in the moment? And then the second piece is, how compassionate can you be with self-awareness? Because if you really grow in self-awareness, especially high-achieving people, they will find that they are self-critical. In fact, a lot of what has driven most of us who are high achievers is a massive inner critic. Some voice of somebody who says, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. The professional athletes that I've worked with over the years, almost all of them, I've hardly met any that didn't have a massive inner critic that's driving them. As you start to grow in self-awareness, you're going to meet your inner critic. And if you can't meet that with compassion, you'll go into what the ancients called the dark night of the soul, which is depression. So the greatest character, there are many, many, many other characteristics of great leaders. Self-awareness and self-acceptance are the two non-negotiables. Now, the greatest skill to have, now you could have skills of visioning, you could have skills of tactical strategic thinking, you could have lots of skills. The greatest interpersonal skill to have is the capacity to listen deeply and profoundly. You don't have to listen long, but after you sit with somebody on your team or an investor or a client, they need to feel after a couple of minutes that you really got them. You really got them. And fortunately, deep listening is a cultivatable skill, but it's not something most high achievers come from the factory wired with. They're just thinking about how to get done what they need to get done, but what they're going to discover eventually is to get done what they want to get done, they have to enroll other people in the dream. And in order to enroll other people in the dream, you have to be able to listen to them deeply enough to hear what their dream is and how their dream joining your dream can be a win for all. So the capacity to listen is a master skill that every great leader has.
Why do you think some people seemingly have it all but are still miserable?
Because they don't have it all.
Fair.
They really don't.
Yeah.
And all you have to do, well, you don't even have to know these people. All you have to do is look at the number of celebrities who are drug addicted, the number of famous people who can't sustain a relationship, the number of rich people who think if I just buy a yacht that's 15 meters longer, so when I go to, the islands, my yacht will be big enough. And all you have to do is notice they don't have it all. They're not happy. It's the great conundrum that all of us believe, that there's something out there that is going to make me okay in here. And it doesn't work. So if somebody says they've got it all, but they're still not happy, they don't have it all. Because if you had it all, you'd have equanimity. You'd have love. You'd have the capacity for intimacy. You'd have children who still want to relate to you. If you had it all. So we confuse have it all with what? Fame and fortune? Power?
Amen.
Yep. Beauty? That's not having it all.
Marriage and relationships. Let's talk about that for a second. Tell me what advice and what wisdom would you pay forward in that category?
I'd have everybody in an intimate relationship learn the difference between being codependent and co-committed.
Can you unpack that for me?
Yeah. Codependency is two ticks on a dog trying to suck the blood out of the dog.
Got it.
So this is two people who get together and they're not okay in themselves. So they come into a relationship thinking the relationship is going to make them okay.
Mm-hmm.
And no relationship has enough in it to do that. So and then we start making agreements that are codependent agreements, which are, I'm here to make you happy, you're here to make me happy. So if I'm not happy, somebody's not doing their job, and guess who that is? You. So now my job is to get you to do your job so I'll be happy. That's a version of codependency. Co-committed says, hey, we're in relationship. I'm responsible for my happiness and well-being. I'll take care of that. So I'll come to this relationship not like a tick on a dog trying to suck the blood out of it. I'll come to it as a whole person. And now we have an additive relationship where both of us are coming as whole people ready to enrich a relationship that can experience both of us in our wholeness. Those are two radically different relationships. And most people come in codependency, and it's easy to do, but it doesn't work. It long-term produces lots of conflict and drama, as opposed to, I'm responsible for my happiness, you're not.
Got it. That's perfect. What are your KPIs that you pay attention to daily and weekly?
Okay. Most of my hard objective KPIs are the ones you know that I have. So, I'm wearing a glucose monitor. I'm checking that as a KPI. I'm looking at all my metrics and all of them physically. Those are the hardest edged KPIs that I have. Everything else for me is soft. And so it just looks like, what is the quality of aliveness that I'm experiencing right now? So a question that I ask myself all the time is, what am I willing to risk to be fully alive? And when you've asked yourself that question for a long time, I know what my aliveness is. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, if you ask me, how alive am I right now? I am fucking alive. In this moment with you. Why? I'm on purpose. I'm doing what I was put on the earth to do. I'm doing it with a friend. We're co-creating something that is fun. If it's not useful, it's at least fun. And if it's useful, oh my goodness. So I just ask myself all the time, how alive am I? How connected am I to my wife? How deep are we? Intimacy. Into me see. How intimate are we? It includes sexual intimacy, but it's so much more than that. So all of my key performance indicators are qualitative now about a certain kind of life that I want to be able to live. What are yours?
You just added one. This is what I love about these types of conversations. So, when people ask me, what are my metrics that matter? Wisdom, purpose, play, and systems. I'll break those down, but I now have to add, how alive am I as the final filter of that? So wisdom, like, who is the company that I am keeping right now? And am I learning from and with and through them, right? So how are we as a collective? What is my purpose? Now, I tell everybody that I don't have to be Gandhi. I'm not going to free a nation, but
Right.
Are you doing something for a reason? And what that could be, going to my daughter's volleyball game and being present, right? It can be doing an array of other things. It can be taking on a big challenge, right? So it can have any of those. Am I playing, right? Because play is where we find flow, right? As adults, it's where we do feel alive, that aliveness, right? So do we have some joy? And man, adulting, right, and shoulding are places where we forget how to play. And that is just so important for vitality, right? And then the last one is systems. So systems are particularly important for me because I like to be in that moment, and it allows me to be better in that moment and make sure that I am respecting how the brain and body work, which is that they are automatic, right? I don't want to think about the steps I took or how many hours. I want to make sure that those boxes get checked and the stuff gets done. So do I have the systems, right, that allow me to make sure that that is being completed?
Wow. 2 I want to click on.
Yeah.
So like if somebody said to you, what's your purpose? What do you say?
So I'm a lover. Like I am meant to keep my heart open and love people. I have skills that help me do that. I am at my worst when I'm a fighter. But we all do that at times, but I'm genuinely a lover. Like I'm here to make this world better, in any of the ways that I can based on the skills.
So your purpose is to love.
Yeah.
And see, the reason I say that is I like to say to people, you need to be clear enough about your purpose that you could ask in any moment, are you on purpose or off purpose? So in this now moment, sitting here right now, are you on purpose?
I am on purpose. Yes. Here's what I'm struggling with though, right? Is when it's to love, right? Who is that directed towards?
Got it.
And there are times where the struggle that I find is when to cut.
Yeah.
because the notion of loving and being open means that you have capacity to do it. But there's a gradation there that can still be being used, right? Taken advantage of, whatever those, parameters may be. And so I really have a hard time with figuring out when is enough and not being what I perceive as a jerk or an asshole or whatever the negative language is there, because that's some of the self-criticism that will come up for me.
Yeah. So if your purpose is loving, a wonderful question is, who am I to love and how am I to love them?
Yeah.
Clarifying that, right?
Absolutely.
Because you might say, I'm meant to love everybody. Okay, great. But if I say, how are you to love everybody? That would be different than I'm meant to love my wife, and here's how I'm meant to love her.
Right.
So that becomes really important, because then when you sit with somebody, since you're here to love, you could say, I'm here to love, but how am I to love them? I'm to refer them to somebody else. In other words, then you start to clarify
makes sense.
how you're being a lover in the world, including, I want to say, you're best when you're a lover and you can be a fighter. I'd want to play with you around. Don't lovers sometimes fight?
They have to.
They have to. You have to be a warrior to love as vigilantly and powerfully as you want to. You have to be a warrior.
Yeah, 100%. And that is a growth edge. That is a place that I have to work on. I am constantly working on. I learned I even just thinking about it in this moment, being totally present, like I will fight fiercely and ruthlessly to be right.
All right. Got it. Maybe not your best fighting.
And that's not the best.
Right.
And there's growth that's needed there. Yeah.
Good.
So
good awareness. And then the second one that I love is play. It's one of my favorite subjects. So sometimes people differentiate work and play, or something and play. There's a book called Play, and I think the author does a good job of defining play. Basically, it's what children are experiencing when they're playing, which is an unself-conscious, so not real self-conscious, absorption in the delight of the now moment such that time goes away.
Yeah.
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because what I say to people, the more your work is like play, the more energizing it is. If people go, well, I work and then at night I go play ping pong and that's where I play. It's the same old thing around work-life balance. Work-life balance is such an outdated mode. It's like, what are you doing here? Work and life? You only have one life. It's how are you cultivating play across your whole life? When sitting with a patient is like play for you, now you're in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens, though. But after you've done it a million times, all of a sudden sitting and doing an intake like you've done a million times before, that stops feeling like play.
We change.
Then you go, what does play feel like now for me? The more this thing we call work can become like play because we're committed to play, the less we need this thing called balance because everything is self-energizing.
Amen.
Yeah, really important distinction.
Totally. So I'm going to end with this last question topic for the two of us. What do you think about this notion of balance and grit, or, you gotta will it to win, or you have to be in harmonious balance? Like where's the there?
Yeah. Okay. Well, they're two different things, right? So grit and balance to me are related, but different. So let's just say grit is the capacity to hang in the midst of difficult times because I need to hang in because it's part of, let's go back to being on purpose in life. It's easy to listen to what I talk about and say, well, so life is easy.
No.
Well, life at times requires doing very hard, difficult things. But I sometimes illustrate it this way. If you watch a novice skier ski a double black diamond run, there's a quality of hard to that, which is fearful, contracted, constricted, dangerous. You watch an expert skier ski a double black diamond run, their pulse is up, they're sweating, Their muscles are under tension, but they're in a flow state. Now, it's not easy like sitting in a whirlpool bathtub in the night to recharge your muscles, but there's a focused flow doing difficult things. That's grit. It's the ability to hang in because it's necessary for you to hang in for your development, for being on purpose, and for the world you're trying to serve. That to me is grit. It's an essential quality of all leaders and anybody who does anything meaningful in life. Right?
Yep.
Balance. I always say balance, and this is the deepest end of the pool. Balance appears to need to counterweight two apparently unharmonious things. But that's actually an illusion. That's what I'm saying. Work-life balance. It's like literally there's a scale. This is the way it used to be. I need work-life balance, so I need to only work X number of hours, and I need to have X number of hours for free time. That is making an artificial distinction between work and life. The more you remove the need to balance, the more you see everything as one, the more you can be fully present to whatever's going on. So whenever anybody says to me, I need to balance these things, I say, really? Or could they just be in oneness and you're just fully alive in it? Now, again, that's a double-click thing. We could go a lot deeper. But I think balance is a misnomer. A lot of it, unless we're talking about the ability to balance on a balance board so my golf swing can get better, then I think there's such a thing as balance.
I find that balance is a misconstrued idea. Right. It is not something to be sought after because there is no such thing as balance in this world that we're living. I don't know what it looks like daily, weekly, monthly.
I don't.
Yeah.
Now, if we want to ask a question, are you vital every place in your life?
Right.
That's a better question. If I'm not vital at work, what do I need to do to become vital at work?
Yeah. So I find myself asking, where are you hiding?
There you go. Well,
that's the question that I ask every, patient of mine is, where do you hide? And when you want to avoid, where are you going to hide?
Well, those are two of the greatest questions. I said self-awareness is the key characteristic of leaders, of anybody. And you want to face something deep, where are you hiding and where will you go to hide?
Yeah.
And if somebody can answer that authentically, first to themselves and then to a trusted other, that's a huge step of authenticity. It's a huge act of courage.
Yeah.
We're hiding for a reason, remember. Hiding isn't bad. We hide for a reason. We hide because we believe that if we didn't hide, we wouldn't be loved, wanted, accepted, and valued. So therefore, I have to hide.
Yeah.
Because if I weren't hiding, you wouldn't love me.
Right. So there's shame, right? We hide when we have shame.
Shame hides.
Yeah.
Shame can't extend to be exposed.
I love you for doing this with me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is really fucking awesome. I hope we could do more of this at some point in time. And thank you for being the first one to do this with me. I had no idea how this was going to go. And I have, I'm sure, 5 more hours that we could do together on this.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, man.
Thank you for your vision and for your willingness to step into the unknown. You don't know where this is.
Yeah, I have no idea where it's going to go.
You just want a creative space.
Yep.
By the way, that's a huge one. Leaders are committed to their creativity.
Yeah.
You're not settling, you're creating.
Yeah. It's,
game on.
It's game on. It's game on. So it's been interesting. It's been interesting to see, how people have responded to that. I've had there's been some tension around that, right? Am I going to hurt the brand? Am I going to do this? And, and it's eye-opening. It's a growth edge. So it's good. That's good.
Wow. Fun, man.
Yeah.